Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to you, my beautiful pen friends, and welcome to another video with your host Andrew. And you join me today for a very special review of a Nakaya Piccolo Midori Tamenuri finish. So let's roll those credits and have a look at the pen. Okay, so before we actually go on to the features of the pen, I just thought it might be interesting to show you what you get for your money when you buy yourself a Nakaya. So the first thing we get presented with is a lovely soft wooden box. There's no splinters, it's perfectly smooth, and I believe it says special pen with Nakaya fountain pen. I'm not a Japanese reader, but my translator came up with that. Please do correct me if I am wrong, and I will gladly try to understand what the actual translation truly is. But I think it just says special pen, Nakaya Fountain Pen Company, and then you've got the red stamp down there below, which I guess is some form of authentication. Anyway, let's open it up. So inside we get the pen, which is presented in this kimono here. We get some blue-black cartridges, a converter, and then lastly we get a European converter for cartridges, which is very useful as I do live currently in the European Union, but not for much longer because I'm in England and we decided to leave. Anyway, that's a discussion for another video. Anyway, let's carry on. What else do we get? Well, we also get a nice envelope, and inside the envelope we get a welcoming letter, which basically says Nakaya pens are unique and each one is carefully customized according to the chart indicating the owner's writing characteristics. Basically, the pen nib has been adjusted to a standard level which will provide a smooth writing experience for most people. In the case that you provided your chart beforehand, your nib was already adjusted to your writing characteristics. If you would like to customize or recustomize your pen nib, please fill in the chart enclosed and send it with your pen to the address below. It will take about a month to adjust. It will be appreciated if sending a notice mail to us before shipping your pen and chart. The adjustments will be free, but please take on the shipping costs. We hope that you will enjoy the wonderful writing experience with your Nakaya pen. Sincerely, Nakaya Fountain Pen Company. So it's basically a bog standard welcoming letter. But what's really interesting actually is the accompaniment letter which goes with it. Bam! This is absolutely insane. So on here you've got essentially your address, your product, clip. But what's really interesting is writing pressure, grip height, writing speed, letter height, about your letters, angle, rotation, and dominant hand. And then you've got some sort of diagrams down there as well. And this is also available on the Nakaya website. And then we've also got some Japanese and English instructions there as well on how to use the converter. So we've also got some care and lacquer fountain pen instruction guides, which basically says can be washed off with water. Use a soft cloth to wipe off any excess ink. Be careful to wipe off the water under the cap or body gets wet. If necessary, diluted dishwashing detergent is in water can be used to remove the remaining stains. Rinse off, do not use bleach, do not use any abrasives, be careful when choosing dishwashing detergents as some of them contain small amounts of abrasives. Storage, extreme dry conditions may result in deterioration. Do not use dry cabinets for cameras and lenses for storage. Okay. Exposures to strong ultraviolet rays may cause deterioration of the fountain pen. Do not leave the fountain pen under the direct sunlight by the window, inside the car or outdoors for a long time. Do not expose the fountain pen to extreme weather conditions in order to protect the urushi lacquerware from any damage. So basically just some care instructions. Okay, so let's talk about the pen. Okay, so as I say, this was the Midori Tamenuri finish, which I think translates to sort of green, and the Tamenuri is the actual effect which we get on the pen. There are other channels out there which know and have far better experience with urushi, and Mikkel, I think it's Mikkel, which is Tamenuri Studios, is an absolute legend. He's an English speaker, and if you've got any questions, you can always ask him. Failing that, you could always talk to someone like Jacob, which is a food fan, and he's on Instagram, and I'll leave a link to him, and he's also in contact with Pelikan, who is another expert with urushi. Anyway, let's just talk about this pen very quickly, and then we'll go on to doing a writing and drawing sample. So let's start at the top. We've got this conical top, which comes to this sort of green band, tapers down onto the cap, and then comes down onto the main part of the barrel, which tapers down quite slightly to a reflected finial on the bottom, which again is a conical form. Right, so let's have a look underneath the pen. So we'll take the cap off. Underneath we've got a fine 14 karat gold nib, and this being a Japanese fine, you'll find that actually this is probably going to write more like an extra fine in European terms, which for me is great because I did buy this for art purposes. It's a light pen, it's quite well balanced. You can't post the cap because this is urushi, and I'm not going to post the cap because I've seen other people say, oh, you can't post the cap, and what do they go and do? They post the cap. Talk about double standards. Anyway, let's take the barrel off. And then we have got the platinum converter on the inside. And in here today, I have put some Pelikan Edelstein ink. It's quite a dry ink, so I'm going to be interested to see how this reacts with this fine nib. I have been told that perhaps Pilot's inks are quite good for this, but I'm going to give this a try and see how it pans out. Okay, so let's go over to a writing sample and drawing sample, and we'll see how this pen operates, and then I'll give you a brief overview of the pros and cons of this pen after.
Right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm just going to do a writing sample, but I'm doing this as a voiceover as opposed to trying to record at the same time and write. I do find that challenging, so in these sections I do tend to try to do this as a voiceover, as I feel I can give a more sort of concise opinion on how the nib is performing as I write. And plus, I'm quite a slow writer, so I just thought this would sort of fill in the gaps, so to speak. So yeah, after about an afternoon's worth of writing and drawing with the pen, I am happy to say that this pen does perform flawlessly in terms of its ability to sort of start straight away, no hard starts, no skipping. So yeah, it's an absolutely fantastic workhorse of a pen. And considering the price which you will pay for this pen, you would have that level of expectations. However, having said that, there are manufacturers out there which do cost almost double this, which don't have nibs which write straight out of the box. And I don't think really when you're looking at £1,000 upwards to get a pen which doesn't write perfectly out of the box, I don't think that's acceptable. So I'm not going to mention any manufacturers because I think that would be unfair. And I do understand that at times nibs can go through the process without actually being thoroughly tested due to workload. Anyway, as you can see, the nib is quite wet. It's not a fire hose, and it's really for a what is essentially a Western extra fine is pretty good. Now the ink we are using today is Pelikan Tanzanite, and I did mention that before, but if you skip that section, and I don't blame you, I do have a tendency to waffle on, and something I'll try to improve later on as I go through this channel. Anyway, it does, it works great with this pen. If I do run into problems, I will start looking at pilot inks and see if that improves, but from my initial impressions, yeah, there's no issues with this whatsoever. Even the plastic feed is fantastic, and it's just to, proof just goes. Sorry, it's just basically proof that you don't always have to have an ebonite feed. A well-cut plastic feed will perform almost as good as ebonite for everyday writing. I would prefer ebonite for flex, but anyway, I digress. You can reverse write with this, as you can see, and it doesn't really alter the line variation, unlike other nibs. And yes, you can squeeze the most tiniest little bit of line variation out of it, but I really wouldn't try to do so. You will spring your nib if you try to flex this, okay? Anything beyond what I've actually just shown you right now. So if you're just doing like a standard letter and you want to give the tiniest little bit of flair to your letters, you will just get a small emphasis on that. Anyway, let's get on to the drawing sample, and I'll stop waffling on.
Okay, I'm going to put up some size measurements and filling capacities for this pen, so you can see precisely how big and how heavy this pen is. That may be of use to you. So, okay, Nakaya. Who's it for and who's it not? Okay, if you like light pens, if you like Japanese nibs, if you like small pens, the Piccolo model is for you. If you are looking at getting Nakaya and those sort of requirements do not fit your sort of personal needs, then I would suggest maybe looking at the Neo Standard or the Long Cigar, or perhaps looking at maybe the dorsal fin. Those are more expensive models, but maybe something which you would be better off saving for. For myself, it's not an issue. Apologies if you can sort of hear the background. There is a cat just constantly screaming next door. Don't know why. Obviously something's upset it. But anyway, let's carry on. The real star of the show really is the urushi finish on this and the nib. It really is an absolutely beautiful pen. And even if this pen doesn't fit your requirements, you can get this finish on larger pens. So it might be something to consider. Nakaya really are... they're quite a modern company, and they are named after basically the foundation of the Platinum Pen Company, and it was revitalised, I believe, in the 1990s. And essentially, it is a company where you get retired Platinum employees who've gone back to work on certain pens, and it's a nice way to sort of ease into retirement without necessarily going cold turkey, so to speak. And it really does show that they have a lot of love for what they do, and you can tell in the finish of this pen. It's not 100% perfect, you know, I could look around this Tamenuri finish and on some of the edges it sort of dips down and it gets a little bit dark and some parts are a bit lighter, but you know, that is part of the charm of a handmade product. It's not 100% perfect, and even if you look at even the finest of Chinas out there with the hand painted finishes on there, anything which is done in bulk can lead to a few sort of irregularities, and there is even on this. But to me, it doesn't really bother me, to be honest, because even, you know, as I've said, you know, even the threads, you know, are handmade. It's just a really beautiful example of Japanese craftsmanship and ingenuity, precision, and this lacquerware is just absolutely fantastic. So Nakaya really are just one of those sort of grail companies for most pen collectors, and I can understand why now. Looking at pictures does not do this pen justice. I really can't stress that enough. It's like looking into an abyss, really, when you look into this lacquer. The reflective nature on this is just absolutely striking, and just those sort of green accents on the end are beautiful. This pen does come in different finishes as well, and there are other reviewers out there which have got examples of that. I wouldn't mind getting myself a long cigar writer at some stage, just to have some more variants of Nakayas, but I'm not going to fall into the trap of just needing to buy pens for the sake of it. And that sort of leads me on to, it's not necessarily a rant, but a cautionary tale, so to speak. Don't ever get into the sort of feeling that maybe spending a lot of money on a fountain pen will bring you a lot of joy. It won't necessarily. I've bought pens which are expensive in the past and been slightly disappointed. Not to the degree that I'm 100% disappointed, but I've just got to the point where I think, you know, if after, you know, about £100, you're going to be guaranteed around about that price that you are going to get yourself a good writer, whether it's from Pilot, whether it's from Pelikan, or from any other sort of major manufacturer. Of course, when you go over a certain price point, you're really starting to pay for more of the materials and the craftsmanship which goes into it. And that's why I'm now starting to lean towards more Japanese pens. There's nothing to say that there's anything bad about Western pens. There's nothing wrong at all. The Italians make absolutely gorgeous pens. But I really love the craftsmanship and the hand lacquering finish of this pen. And I really do want to get myself something in Maki or Chinkin at some stage. And I think that is where you can see the investment actually within the pen. I would argue, from my own personal perspective, investing in an expensive pen from Visconti or perhaps Mont Blanc, I don't necessarily see the value in some of the models. Maybe some of the materials are rare, and perhaps that is what commands some of the price. So it's not that I don't get it. It's not necessarily for myself, especially when you look at maybe some of the Homo sapien ranges from Visconti. The beautiful pens, some of the filling mechanisms are, fantastic. I can't get away from that. Practicality, they're great, but the price which they ask for, you can start looking at Nakayas, you can start looking at Namikis, you can look at other custom manufacturers, and I think you can just get a lot more bang for your buck. But that's my own personal opinion, okay? And I don't want that to reflect necessarily upon what your decisions are. At the end of the day, we've all got our own personal preferences, and that really is the hardest part of reviewing a product, is the fact that you've just got to understand that everyone's got their own personal preferences. Just because I like this pen and this colour finish doesn't necessarily mean the next person will. And that is, as I say, really hard to actually sort of emphasise on a review. All I can really do is give an objective, personal approach to my sort of reviewing styles, and I hope that is appreciated and maybe will help influence you into perhaps considering maybe just the brand themselves. And if we are going to talk about the brands, let's just talk about Nakaya. Nakaya really are a fantastic brand. They're well known, they're very well known, in fact they're grail worthy. But if you were to see this pen, there is no branding on here whatsoever. So other than perhaps on the nib, some people might recognise the shape. That's great. But, for the J-blogs out there, it's unassuming. So, yeah. Anyway, that's it really in a nutshell. I won't sort of rant and rave too long. I wish that cat would shut up. It is going on and on and on. Anyway, I'm going to sign off now and go and get myself a drink, and hopefully I shall see you next week, but it may be a couple of weeks. I am going back to work next week, and I don't know what my energy levels are going to be like at the weekend, so we'll see. I have got a few other projects in mind to share with you. I've got a Twisby Go coming, so hopefully I'll get a review on that, and I've also got a Oranga Model 6 coming in the pipelines for future videos. So some exciting stuff out there, so I shall see you in the next video, and until then, stay safe and be well. Goodbye for now. Oh, and don't forget to like, subscribe and hit that bell if you want to see some more content in the future. Till then, bye-bye.